Right? Meldis, I'll give you the link. Okay, there we go. All right, so if you're all fine with this, let's get started. And let me give you, I'm gonna make my introduction quite short because for the purposes of the session, I think what could be more interesting of all this would be to generate some sort of discussion as we were doing informally, before the beginning of the session. And just a little bit about me, and I'm just gonna put your cameras here up there so I can see you kind of, simulating that we're in the same room. And my name is Pedro Díaz Ridao. I'm this guy in the picture. Let's see if you can see the guy there on the left side. And this is what I do for a living. I love writing, but I make a living, speaking. And so I think writing and speaking are part of my life. I am a university professor. I hold a PhD in management and leadership. But what I think can be more interesting for you today is a bit about just a personal experience of going through different projects and trying to learn a little bit from each of them. We're going to talk about mainly two topics today: my experience in international projects, and some of them more related to your topics, to international development. Others not directly related, but I think that we can get some learnings from them. And then a second and shorter part on, if I may say, career advice, or maybe things that can be helpful for you in this moment of life. I know that you just submitted a lot of assignments, and you're now in between the assessments that were submitted and the exams that will be coming. And of course, you are focusing or trying to shift from the urgent things, what you need to do very shortly, to the important stuff, which is, what brought you to take a master's degree and what keeps you engaged in the industry, which is, seeing what next steps you will take. Needless to say, we are in a, clearly uncertain environment. And I think that, that we will talk also a little bit about this because I think it has major implications and opportunities for your industry and for our industry. So I was saying, what I do for a living is train people. I'm a corporate trainer. Besides being a professor, and what I do and what I think, I'm 38 now, looking a little bit back and hearing the feedback that people say about me in terms of my strengths, is that I am good at making people get better. And this sounds quite naive, quite a statement, but what it talks about is developing soft skills, leadership skills, and helping people gain self-confidence. And sometimes those things are hard to measure, and that's why my work is called intervention, because I travel the world. I work with teams. It could be 1 week, it could be several months, where we meet every month, every 2 months. But I help teams, individual people, but especially individual persons, but teams of people move forward. That goes by maybe selling more if they have to work in sales, or making sure their people are engaged and motivated. So how I got there, it's another story. I'll share a little bit about that today. But I think, just to give you some context, this is some figures, some data on the situation right now. And everybody knows what this has brought, what COVID-19 has brought. I think talking about development, it brings, and I don't know if you can see here, because with you can see the headline, right? It brings a lot of needs, but also is bringing opportunities. And one of the most difficult things that we have right now is to be able to see how we can grow in the middle of things that have been stopped. And sometimes you send emails and people are not responding, and you will say, of course, they've got more important things to do, right? Maybe answering my email. Let me give you the first piece of advice. Don't stop. Send those emails, okay? Because little by little, things will go back to, as we call, the new normal. And what's for sure is that we need people with your skills. We need people that have skills in making projects and in helping fix those gaps that are existing in our society. COVID has brought more gaps. Every time there is a gap, every time there is a divide, there are needs that we need to address. Okay, sometimes those needs will be addressed by other people, and they will hire you to work and try to shorten the gap. And in other times, you will be the one that you'll see potential opportunities in those gaps. Okay, we will talk about this today as well. what do we mean by this? For me, one step would be, what can I do short time? Okay, there's something that I always say, and it's called the power of coffee. Okay, right now, in most cases, you cannot meet with people physically, face to face. Now, luckily, we are starting to do that. And I have a lot of pending coffees. I have a lot of pending meetings that people are waiting, but I am not waiting for all of them. I am having many virtual coffee meetings. Why? Because we have a wonderful opportunity to get people's time that before was impossible. Some of those people that we're interested have more time now than they would have on a normal basis. Okay, so I think it's interesting to see when we talk about networking, there are two ways of seeing this. Number one is to contacting people that I don't know, right? Like cold calls. Or the second, and I think for me it's more important, who is already in your network that you haven't talked to in a while. And that will be the first circle, okay? Reconnect, we are in a moment of reconnection, okay? Reconnecting with that person that you send an email, and they will be very thankful because now everyone is valuing proximity, closeness, rapport, connection, okay? Create that bonding. I'm going to share with you today two main projects, and most of the projects that I've done all came because of a coffee meeting. Somebody, I sent an email or I received an email saying, hey, let's meet for coffee. And out of that coffee, a project arose. I always say, don't underestimate the power of coffee. And I'm not a coffee person, okay? But it does help. First coffee that I had took me to receive a grant from one university to create a development project in Nicaragua. What was my knowledge about Nicaragua? Zero. I knew the capital, that was it, but I had a know-how, and the know-how was in sports science. I was a professor, I am still a sports science professor, and while I was teaching, I saw there was an opportunity to create a development project in Nicaragua it was a cooperation project with a local counterpart, with a nonprofit. And they needed know-how it was a capacity building project. We were gonna conduct workshops. So I was super excited. And this is when my first learning path of projects began. Let me give you a bit of a backstory. As many of you, I'm sure, I love traveling. And traveling for me is probably one of my main purposes in life. So I thought this was perfect. I'm gonna get to travel to one more country, check. And when I go there, I can bring know-how and help. That was my initial thought. Then, of course, came reality. What was reality? It was understanding first the local context. I was there in Granada. Imagine Nicaragua. I don't know if any of you have been there, or maybe you have some connections. There is a volcano area. You see here, Masaya. This is the zone that has a couple of volcanoes. And we were there in order to do a sports-related project. So the story starts here in a tiny city called La Granadilla, within a small city, within a small region, within, as you know, the second poorest country in the whole America. So there, we were literally in the middle of nowhere. It was in the forest. And for me, the first thing was lack of control. I arrived, it is evening time, there's no light, and I see somebody guiding me in the dark, in the forest. And what do you have to do? Trust, because there's nothing else that you can do. They take you in the middle of the forest, and then we get to the house. There, next day, we have a meeting. And in that meeting, we meet the local community. I was bringing 12 students, and we were all conducting all the workshops. And there, we were given an appointment. We had been working in Spain for 1 month. Well, we worked for a year, but specifically in the project for 1 month, preparing those seminars on health, nutrition, of course, physical activity. We were going to give them a certificate. Everything, in theory, was well planned. And then, of course, we faced reality. They said, okay, we want you to teach in coaching skills. And what we heard when we got there was that they were expecting us to teach baseball. Yeah, because they play baseball, and for some reason they thought that we were very good at baseball. And I was like, okay, this is not a baseball program, not even a football program. They think, oh, Spain, football, right? We had prepared full methodology. It was useless. Had we met with them 100 times? Yes. it still was useless. But for me, the first shocking moment was when I had to address, in this room, we had 90 people. So you don't see the whole room, but it was not that big. So it was crowded. And I started talking very energetically. And I got zero responses. How are you? Silence, you know. Okay, we brought this program. Okay, what is your name? And then the person freezes. And I'm like, wow, they don't understand Spanish, but they speak Spanish. What's going on? And the problem was that they were not used to, as you can imagine, talk to strangers, talk to, you know, people from another country, especially if you were white. So for me, that was quite shocking. But it didn't take long to adapt to this context. Now, I had prepared, we had people that had a lot of experience in other countries. It was absolutely different. So what did I get from this first moment and first experience? That local participation within the preparation of the project is essential. And we had done that. We did that. So it was okay. We didn't make a mistake there. Second, empowerment is key. We went there to train in some skills. And when we left, they continued those capacity building programs because they already had the know-how. We had 5 adults over 20 that we trained specifically. So imagine you train all the kids and you train the adults at the same time. It's a little bit like service learning. I don't know if you're familiar with service learning. It's like you help, and by helping people, you receive help. So those 5 adults that we work with, they received, it's called service learning. And it consists of, for instance, to give an example, in Spain, there's a lot of people that come, especially to the Canary Islands. They come by boat and then they send them to Spain. So instead of seeing them as, oh, they need help, the first thing they do with them is they place them in families to take care of old people. Okay, why? Because by helping people, actually, they do a lot in Burgos and León in Spain, and by helping people, they free their minds from the notion of, I need help. Okay, I am a passive item. I am an active person that I'm helping somebody. And at the same time, yes, an organization is helping me. I'm talking about foster care people or any type of person, okay? So what we did was, let's train the adults so that when we leave, they don't notice that we're gone, okay? That's the best footprint that we can leave. So we did empowerment, but we did not do any monitoring and any evaluation. This was our weak point. We created a wonderful project, but nobody was there measuring the impact. So when we came to Spain, we couldn't apply for grants because nobody was collecting data. Nobody was doing a pre-post to check really how was that evolution. We had a great feedback, but where's the feedback? Nowhere. No, it was not written, it was not. So that was for me a major learning. Okay, whatever you do, you know the quote. If it's not measured, it doesn't exist, right? You need to measure things. You need to find a way, whether it is quantitative, qualitative, both, better or worse, but you need to do that. So since then, it was for us, it was a life-changing moment. And then for us, we had one obsession, which was sustainability. This project needs to last. It won't last as long as you want, but it needs to last enough for you to say that it was worth it. Okay, what is the effort of launching a project? I've measured this in my experience in 3 years. This project, for instance, lasted 4 years. Okay, I only was there the first year, and every year there were people going from Spain, coming from Nicaragua, and creating this loop. So those 4 elements for me are key in a project, and I learned that if you have 3 out of 4, it doesn't mean that you got 75% in the grade. You can get 0 because that element of measuring becomes really, really important. Another thing that I learned was that legacy can be much bigger than you expect. To give an example, by the way, the picture here is in the same community. This is the Real Madrid jersey signed by Real Madrid players, and the story is that I've been related to Real Madrid first in events and then in the academic side for many years. So we took something there, hoping that they will love it. And you know what they said? We don't want that because everybody here supports Barca, FC Barcelona. And we were like, come on, people would pay so much for this jersey. Of course, they say they wanted the Barca one, but they kept the jersey. So I think someone there really liked Real Madrid. And I said the legacy, not only in those 4 years that the project was conducted in this region of Nicaragua, but the people that we took from Spain to Nicaragua, some of them stayed in Nicaragua, some of them created other projects in Nicaragua, and others went somewhere else and created a project back in Spain or in Madagascar, just to give you two very different projects or examples. So when you plant a seed, imagine you creating the first project, bringing one volunteer, it becomes exponential. You take 4 people the first year, those 4 people will do the same with others. Projects, especially in international projects, because of the experiential learning, become exponential. What takeaways I got from that moment? That we don't have to make a difference between a sports for development project and a regular project. Every project, no matter if it's national, international development or not, every project is going to have a cultural challenge always, no matter what you do it. I was telling you that I do corporate training, and we've got somebody from Indonesia. I was not that far from you. I was in Malaysia a few months ago, and I was there. And the first thing they said was, okay, your project, your workshop has been scheduled for Friday. On Friday, we're done at noon. Plus, we have to pray. So you have 2 hours. And I said, okay, nobody told me this. All right. And you also have the responsibility to find out, to do your research. And I know this sounds obvious for you, but sometimes it is the obvious things, the ones that we neglect first. They're so obvious that we just go through them really fast. Okay. So it's never enough in terms of knowing the local culture. A friend of mine launched a project with a nonprofit from Bolivia. And she was there. She was the finance director of this project. So everything, the whole budget went through her arms. So one day a person comes and says, hey, we need to buy ink for the printers. And my friend says, no, well, wait, because we already made the purchase. So we have to wait for the next tax term in order to place more purchases. And the person went away. And another person, an official came and said, hey, what do you tell this person? She came to me crying, and he was like, what do you mean? Yeah, the person said that you treated her really badly. And she said, I just said that we couldn't buy the ink. And he goes, it was a man to the woman, and he goes, but why did you say that? And she goes, because we don't have money, we have to wait. Yeah, but why did you say no? And she said, I don't understand. Yeah, don't say no, say come and ask me tomorrow. And then, yeah, but if she comes tomorrow, what do I say? Say come tomorrow, and if you say come tomorrow twice, she'll understand that it's a no. And she was like, okay. And I'm sure you've gone through this. You come from different countries, and sometimes in some countries, the capacity to say no is very limited because a no has major implications. We can talk about regions, I'm sure you might think of some Asian countries, but it can also be in the US. I've lived there for many years, and people there, it's a very proactive country. They don't always tell you no. So don't think that this is a cultural thing, meaning it happens in China or it happens in Thailand. No, it can happen also in the US, where they will say it in a different way. In Asia, for instance, in China, they will look down. In the US, they'll smile, but it means no too. Okay, so those cultural norms can happen anywhere. And the second thing is that, and you know this well, we will plan things, but they will not go as planned. Okay, what is our capacity to create those backup plans? There's a great quote from an American philosopher. I don't know if you know him. His name is Mike Tyson, the boxer. No, honestly, and I just heard that he's coming back now. He's a crazy guy. I don't know who he's gonna fight against, but he said something that I really like. He said a quote, and it goes like this: we all have a plan until we get the first punch in the face. So he already knew that you need to have a second B plan or even a third plan, okay? So what's our ability to create a good plan? That's now what you will be measured and valued for. You will be valued for how fast you are at going from your first plan to the second one. How tight you get because it was the way you planned it, or how flexible you are to understand that you need to keep the essence, keep the structure, but be able to modify that, especially if you're involving local elements. Because if you come with your story, it will always be your story. And you know how it goes, right? I'm coming from the north, this is you, and then you create a bigger gap, okay? Prepare a plan so that it's got gaps already, holes that people will fill, okay? And they will feel they have a say in there, okay? If you prepare it too much, nobody will feel included into that because they'll see that it's already too packaged. Don't be afraid of opening up those packages, okay? Another thing that can be surprising too is the paces. It's the rhythm that each person has. This is a picture from my friend Santiago from Argentina. Goes to Pakistan, and he opened a fair trade sports clothing brand. And he was buying clothes and balls to sell them in the US, fair trade, having that certificate. And he met a friend, the one with the cell phone, and he was going to purchase from a big factory in Northeast Pakistan. So he was about to go to the factory, only 3 days in the country. Every day he had many meetings, so his schedule was pretty packed. And then this colleague said, hey, wait, come with me because we're going to go to pick up strawberries with my family. And my friend was like, okay, wow. He didn't say it, but he thought, what do you mean? Like, I'm here for 3 days. I need to visit all the factories to see which products to buy. But what did he do instead? He went and picked up strawberries for 5 hours, and he was going nuts. He was just going crazy because he thought he was wasting time. Well, when they finished picking strawberries, he came and gave him the report of all the factories. He had all the information. All what my friend was panicking about was already being done. Now, you imagine my friend there sitting, thinking, I'm stupid, what am I doing here? I spent a lot of money coming from Argentina and then the US, and I need to do what I'm supposed to be doing. So who sets the pace? Is it you going to create a project, or is it those people that you will depend upon, okay? Sometimes you're the one that needs to push a little bit, but your ability to adapt and to understand paces is essential. As you know, there are two types of creating a bond. Some countries, this is Hofstede, by the way, it's a great author. I'm going to write it in the chat so you can read about him, because I think he is for me I don't know where the chat is now, when I put it. Anyway, I'll just find it. He created the cultural dimension study. Sorry, the cultural dimension study, and in there it's amazing to see that some countries you first build trust personally, and then you build business trust in your business, trust in your capabilities. Other countries you first build business trust, and then you build personal trust. So understanding that, depending on where you go, you will need to use different cards, okay? It's always you. You won't lose your essence, but you need to adapt to this. So here I have to be more open to developing a relationship. And here I have to be more, let's say, more formal or more business-like in order to create that personal bond, okay? It depends on who you talk, and you will read that in people, okay? That's an ability that you will gain. And the other thing that for me is essential is those problems that are around you that hurt, okay? The problems that hurt. For me, there was one problem that hurt in my life, and it was being here in Madrid and seeing that you don't need to go far away to see injustice. You know that. You don't need to go to a developing country like Nicaragua, which is much poorer than your home country called Spain, and you can use this for your own countries, to find out that are things that need to be addressed. In the case of Spain, it was homelessness. It was getting big. In the city of Madrid, I come from a small town. I come from a little town in the southeast where everybody knows each other. There are no homeless. So it's like a big community. Going to Madrid and seeing that people cross the sidewalk to avoid seeing poverty, it just blew my mind. So I tried and decided to do something about that. That something was, first, gathering data, okay? So gathering data worldwide and in Spain. And I discovered that there were only in Madrid over 2,000 homeless officially, right? Because non-officially there are way more, but in records. And half of them, they were having serious health issues, which, by the way, so you know, a homeless person cost the city council, cost the city between 30 and 80,000 euro per year. So we're not only talking about a problem that affects 2,000 people, we're talking about a problem that affects the whole city, because you enter here hospitals that need to generate resources for them, taxpayer money, and also resources from the city council, and lives that are in danger. So what did I see? A lot of projects were focusing on their health, on housing, and on employability. But there were no projects involved in helping them raise their self-esteem. First thing that I did was see what shelters, what daycare centers were in Madrid, and where could we create a project. So we started just going around, interviewing them, getting data from the local. This is Madrid, as you can see. This is downtown Madrid. And there, we started a pilot project. What is the lesson that we have learned from Nicaragua? That you need to build trust first. So we didn't launch the project until we made sure they knew us, who we were. And I'm saying we because we had two people from those volunteers in Nicaragua that were now in Madrid working with me in this project. Okay, so we started building a community. There, from that, we used a positive situation, which was learning from best practices. If you want to launch a project, think, okay, has this been launched somewhere else? What were the consequences? What was the impact? We found out there was an organization in the US called Back on My Feet that was doing a similar thing with a lot of success. So what do you do when you innovate? You copy and improve, you know, copy paste, you know, Control C, all right? And then you see, okay, what can we adapt locally? There were things that were not gonna work in Spain. They were too American, but there were others that could really work. So one thing that would not work in Spain was raising funds the way they do it in the US. Because in the US, it's a philanthropy country where people, I don't know if you know this, people post the money that they donate in their company websites. It's public and they brag about it and it's normal. And they have competition to see who donates more. If you take it to a country like Spain, this is your privacy. This is, you will never see that. So you have to pass a project through the cultural filter again. So in this time, it was not me adapting to Nicaragua, but me bringing an idea and adapting that idea to Spain and to our reality. And this was the phase that you can see here in the next slide of the venue managers, the psychologists, everyone that was here in our project. You plan to take homeless people and do sports, practice sport with them, running, football, later cycling. You are crazy. You know, they call us crazy a lot, but you know what? We liked crazy. So we decided to keep that project, to move on. And the project became a reality and became a huge success. Of course, we also made some funny, big or small mistakes. Some of them, you see the picture here, we had a lot of donations, right? Equipment donations, corporate donations. And imagine these rugby guys donating their shoes, their running shoes. It was great for us. There was one problem, right? This shoe size was huge. So we had a lot of shoes that nobody could wear because their sizes were just too big. So, okay, we said, okay, we have to find partners, but we need to check their shoe size first. So we exchanged those shoes with another organization that gives us smaller shoes. And then we just started the project. We started going to races. We raced not only in Madrid, but through Spain. And we created a community formed by homeless people and volunteers. It was not a homeless run club. It was a simple running club that happens to have homeless people and volunteers. So once you go there, you don't know who's who. There are no labels. For us, that was the essence. Every project that we saw in the US had a label. Oh, this is the homeless project. And if you're a volunteer, you see who's a volunteer and you see who's not. No, that was not our idea. Our idea, as you will see later, was mixing. It was the power of the mix. We also faced a lot of difficult challenges. One of them involved politics. One of our runners, one of our homeless people in the team was deported. He was pushed to Morocco. And actually, he didn't reach Morocco. He was left in Ceuta, which is one of our 2 colonies in Northern Africa. And he was there and he called me and said, Pedro, you need to bring me back to Madrid. And I'm like, I'm just a guy that has a project. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, but I had to find out. I felt that I had this need to at least try and help. I even thought of crazy things. I even thought of taking my car, going down and pick him up. As you can imagine, that was not very wise and not legal either, okay? So I said, okay, what can we do? So we started connecting, as I said first, reconnecting with our people. And we contacted a law firm that helped us with the process. By the time we had all the papers, he calls me and says, Pedro, I'm going back. I was like, what do you mean? I'm on a bus. I crossed the border. I'm back in Spain. I'm in Cadiz, and I'm going to Madrid on a bus. And I said, how? He said, well, the immigrant center got full. They put some of us back to Spain to another immigrant center. And then there was a police officer there that I don't know why, but I felt too nice. He saw I was nice and he gave me the money and put me on a bus and sent me back to Madrid. And I said, why? And he said, because I told him that I had a race on Sunday, that I don't want to miss it. And he paid for me for that ticket. We had a race on Sunday, and this is him here in red running this half marathon with me and everybody else from the nonprofit. So imagine, if I tell you this, what are the odds, right? That a police officer that actually the police took you there is going to also be the one that brings you back, okay? This is for sure not something to keep as a best practice, but you see a lot of situations like this where for some reason it is, serendipity or whatever you want to call it, but it does happen. And it was quite a learning for us. We also were able to meet and have a lot of great experiences. We organized roundtables. We got to meet with one of the most interesting people in Spain in terms of international development. He's the guy with a beard. His name is Chema Caballero. He is a missionary. He has been living in Sierra Leone for over 25 years. He became a blogger. He's got, I don't know if you read Spanish, but he's got a blog called Africa No es un país. Africa is not a country, where he basically blogs about African issues. And he became good friends with Iker Casillas, Real Madrid former goalie, and he was the one responsible for bringing Iker to Sierra Leone. Iker Casillas spent 1 week there when he was playing for Real Madrid. Since that moment, he's been traveling to see sports for development projects every summer in his holidays. Again, once you plant a seed, if it goes to the right person in the right time, it can be exponential. The person in the middle, next to him is Paul Hansen. He was the director of the United Nations Office on Sports for Development and Peace. Before we realized, our little nonprofit had an agreement with the UN, and we were working, training the youth in the UN in different countries on life skill and leadership skills. And we were still a tiny nonprofit. Next to him is UNICEF director for Spain, and next to her is Emilio Butragueño, who is a former player and now then vice president and now head of institutional relations. So we try to spread the word, and we try to use sport not just as one tool to bring people together, but really to tackle deep problems, health issues, social integration issues, building the community. Of course, personal development, because it's all starting in self-awareness, self-esteem. If you don't have self-esteem, you're not gonna go and face a job interview, right? Imagine if you don't have anything, but you need to have self-esteem, okay? Violence prevention, we launched a project with women that have suffered domestic violence here in Madrid. You will never see that on a website. You will not see that on the news, but it was launched. So you also see that many projects are never published because of privacy, because of intimacy, or to protect people's rights, but they have a major impact. And also we started we have to say, I have to say not successfully, to create an employability arm for this, just to give them tools. We had 2 of the runners that became coaches. So it's true that we have 2 success stories, but we also have many that went back to being homeless and were coming back and forth. Okay, it's not something that you are either homeless or not, but life can change a lot. Imagine you get a job, it's all good, you can afford a house. If you don't have a job, you go back, and it's an ongoing process. I said that before, the power of the mix. This is the final of the homeless tournament in Spain, and the final here is played with homeless people and workers of Vodafone, the phone company, and that's what I call the power of the mix. Why should a homeless tournament be just for homeless? It should be for anybody that wants to play. And there you find relationships, you find friendships. And we've seen now people opening up a restaurant together, sharing an apartment, people that used to be selfish and should not trust each other. Okay? Why? When society gives you the back, you don't trust anybody. Okay? We are all trusting each other, but if everybody's giving their back to us, you start mistrusting people. Okay? For me, a couple of thoughts on a more generic basis. There are 2 questions that I think sometimes are wrongly addressed. We say we look for happiness. We say we look for things that make us happy. But what I've noticed is that those things come to us while we're doing other things. So let me rephrase that and ask you the question, what has meaning for you? Let's change the word happy for meaning, okay? Not what makes me happy or not, because sometimes my kids, they make me happy and they make me go crazy. But do they have meaning for me? Yes, they do. Okay. The project is going to give you the best and maybe sometimes the worst, but does it have meaning for you? Does it fulfill that purpose? Okay. Now, who'll see in 2 years? The purpose might change, of course. And again, don't take this as golden, but it's my experience. Until a few years ago, I would say yes to anything that would come to me. Opportunities. When I was in doubt, I would think, if they call me for this project, maybe they see something, maybe they see value. They called me to go and speak at a conference in Mexico. I was so excited. Then they told me that the main speaker got sick, and that's why they were calling me. And I said, okay, well, at least they're calling me. I'm not the third, I'm the second. And then I went there, super excited, but also, shaken, because it was a major event. And they called me again and again. And it was because when I was in doubt, I said yes. Well, when I turned 35, I had to change a little bit because I was saying yes to everybody, but I have a family. I started having more things, and I realized that time became more precious than before. I'm not saying that it's not precious now for you. It is. But the decisions, the weight, the impact of your decision right now is much lower than my decision. Imagine, for me, a financial decision. Okay, when you have kids, you have a lot of constraints, right? What if they go to college? What if when I'm not with kids, I can be more, I can be braver. And by the way, this is something that I studied in my PhD with entrepreneurs too. So it is a good moment to be brave, okay? After 35, well, of course, maybe we'll start to see, to choose. And by saying no to things, your value goes up. That was something that I discovered. Because if I say no, what do people think? Oh, this guy's busy. It means he's good. Am I better because I'm busy? Not really. But right now we're in a moment where people think that being busy equals being of great value. So it's good to say yes now. It will be good if you have to say no. And I have a feeling that in this industry, we tend to say yes, and we tend to not be able to say no because of our generosity. Okay, so let me be very even harsh. Okay, with this example, if you have a problem saying no to people and you feel you need to say no, try the best advice that I was ever given: disappoint people. It's a great practice to disappoint somebody. It's a healthy practice. Okay, maybe not everybody, but try it, because we're not that important. Okay, and sometimes we feel that That no is absolutely a must. Okay, and there are ways for that. What have I learned that I invite you to try? Instead of thinking of creating a project, think of generating the best insights for your project. The best project that I've seen had 2 ingredients, not more. And you're seeing those 2 ingredients, a paper and a pen. Think of projects right now. What do we do now? Ideation. Let's build a project. We should spend at least 6 months with a pen and a paper, not thinking about a project, just focusing on understanding, on hearing the people, noting everything, and then generating insights based on that research. I'm not talking about something formal. It can really be, as I've seen in the past, a pen, a paper, and going out there and asking people, hey, what is your major challenge? What is your #1 challenge right now? Did you imagine right now we would go to different countries, organizations, and ask this question? What is your major challenge right now? What would they say? What do you think they would say? Can you think of a real organization that maybe you're thinking of addressing? What would they say? They might say, to give you the first answer, they might say, our biggest challenge right now is to help people in this technological shift because we've got, say, a lot of older people that were not that tech savvy, maybe. Or they would say, is to be productive or to be able to not close a project because of this lack of funding. How can we keep that, knowing that it's costing us money? If we were doing something and it stopped, it is costing money. Think of those questions, okay? Because a lot of times we go to places and we think, oh, they expect me to give my opinion. They expect me to say something. The best statement that you can give them is a good question. It will give you insights. And by the way, as a consequence, it will make you smarter too. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask. And I think it could be a great training. If you allow me to share, I wanted to, I've just picked a few books that I like, and I think that they can be maybe inspiring for you as they were for me. I don't know if you've read any of those 3 or 6. It would be interesting to see. There are different books. The ones that you see in the top left and top middle are 2 books on company stories, on social enterprises stories that I think can be interesting because it's an autobiography about somebody that challenged status quo. The one on the top right is the most famous book because it gave name to a movie called Invictus about, you might see the rugby story in South Africa that united, the black and the white population through rugby. And it's based on a book called Playing the Enemy. Okay, it's written by a British Spanish journalist named John Carlin. He's got a British name, but a very Spanish accent in Spain. He speaks better Spanish than me. I'm like, this guy, how can he be so good? He's also written many biographies, like Rafa Nadal, also one of Mandela's autobiographies. And the ones in the bottom here, Kaboom is a great book because it's based on the story of a person, Darrell Hammond, the founder, that created one of the largest nonprofits in the US. When Hurricane Katrina happened in New Orleans, this nonprofit, when nobody could access the city, this nonprofit had sent airplanes full of equipment to the city because of their ability they had to be able to respond fast. We're talking about a $500 million nonprofit, so it's a large nonprofit. And what they do is very simple. They build playgrounds. That's what they do. They build playgrounds to create safe spaces for play. And it was all based on a story of 2 kids that died while they were playing in an abandoned car. He read that in the paper. This happened in Florida, and he said, we have to do something about this. What was the root cause analysis? They died because they had no playground in their neighborhood, because the only place was a dangerous one. So he didn't say, let's meet funds, let's just take funds to create this playground. No, he said, let's engage the community. Again, the local community. So what he did was get the equipment, but who built the playground? the neighbors. Who actually designed the playgrounds? The kids. The kids became the designer. Of course, it went through designers later, but they drew that. Why is that important? You know, wear and tear of things. Usually public parks, public playgrounds, you can imagine, they've got a high rate of wear and tear because, you know, people just go crazy there. Luckily, coincidentally, it's ironic, these playgrounds from Kaboom are the ones that have the least wear and tear. Why? Because people really feel they own the playground because they made them with their own hands. Okay, for me, that's a great analogy. If you involve people in your project, not only they'll feel engaged, they'll have ownership, but they'll also take care of the project because they will feel that's theirs. Okay, and then the other two books are on just different thoughts. One is by Nobel Peace Prize Muhammad Yunus, as you know from the microcredits, and he wrote a couple books. While I don't agree with some of his ideas in the book, I think it's good for generating thoughts on the social versus the traditional business, something that already is, you know, of course, quite present in this field. And How to Change the World, the one in the bottom, it's by David Bernstein. I think it's one of the must reads for what we call the fourth sector, which is that of social innovation. So again, just a few reads here that I wanted to share. A couple more resources. If you're interested in seeing resources that have to do with sports, there's a great platform called sportanddev.org that also has a jobs section, which includes volunteer opportunities, internships, and jobs. And yes, they are specific to sports, and maybe you're not interested in this, but it can also give you a hint on what skills they are requesting, okay? For instance, I told you about our lack of monitoring and evaluation skills, and here you can download toolkits, and also you can apply and see what skills are being demanded right now in the industry that I can apply, maybe even to other fields. And two stories to finish this first part. One has to do with a colleague of mine. This is two people here from the nonprofit that we use to work with homeless people. And one thing that caught my attention was that both came to the project feeling in the same way. One was homeless, the other one wasn't, but both were unemployed, both were depressed, and both needed a project. Okay, I don't want to say here, when I say project, I mean something. I know a lot of people that are happy, and they're happy because they have a project. It's just having a reason to wake up in the morning. So they will wake up early, they will come to practice, they will come to the races. After 1 year, the one on the right was the head of volunteers. He was so happy, he was unemployed, but he was happy because of the project. And I got a call from the head of Real Madrid Foundation. And he said, Pedro, I need a person to be the head of football. And I said, okay, what profile are you looking for? And he said, you know, just criteria, degree, master's degree, and a proven experience in a social project. And I said, wow. I went through that filter in my mind of the people that I knew, my students and contacts, and I said, I think I have your guy, because you're looking for someone very specific, but I know somebody that has all those skills. So I just introduced them to each other, and it was just like a, you know, like a love at first sight. And Eduardo, which is just his name, became the head of football. He went up, and now he's overseeing the work of 194 coaches and coordinators at Real Madrid Foundation. So I don't want to say with this, go work for free. It's not the point. But I do want to say that every time that you're volunteering, every time you're helping, you are building a legacy in people. You are building skills in you and also building a legacy in people. I've worked for free in many occasions. I'm going to share with you a few after, you know, during the Q&A. But what I noticed was that many of those experiences, I thought they would only give me money, but they gave me more than that. Maybe you go somewhere else next year and you'll need to work and also maybe have two jobs. One job that you love that doesn't pay or doesn't pay well, and maybe another job that is the one that pays the bills. But what you don't know now is that that job that you don't like that pays the bill might give you the skills that you'll be asked to have in 10 years? Okay, so I know it's hard to say when you're looking forward, but that's been my experience that I want to share. And here's a little bit of that experience. So how many selves do we have? Think of your experience, okay? Think of your past jobs, any type of job you've had, okay? So who is Pedro? Pedro is a book author, okay? So I could say, I could define myself as that, okay? Yeah, but I think that doesn't define me. There are more things that define me. So another thing is social entrepreneur, but also a grill cook at Burger King in Leicester, in the UK. Also a hotel showman because I was dancing and singing. And now, because I did that in a hotel for tourists when I was little, if I have to speak as I had to in front of 1,500 people, I'm not nervous because I've been doing this for many years, okay? So it just goes down to the skills, okay? Being a bellboy, as I was in a hotel, helps you to understand what people need and to develop empathy, okay? So think of all those things you've done and you'll see that they're gonna be adding up to, whether, as you say here, you work in a market, you work as a teacher, you create a nonprofit, okay? Because some of those jobs look fancier. Of course, if you go on my LinkedIn, you won't see hotel animator, hotel bellboy, right? I don't share that on LinkedIn, but I do share that, and I'm not ashamed of that because it is one more of my different selves. We don't have just one self, we have different ones. Let me give an example. I told you about Burger King. I did part of my studies in the UK, in Leicester to be more specific. And while I was working there, I worked in two places. In a factory, I had to wake up at 4:30 a.m., freezing cold, and then I was going to class. And then at Burger King. Many years later, they called me to give a keynote speech for Burger King executives. And I shared a story of me, first day at the job, having my wrist burned when I was putting the burgers in the grill. And they were like, wow, okay, you know us, you've been there. It just gave me the connection with them just with one story, okay? That's why I want to say that with every single thing that you do, maybe some won't connect, but most of those things, you will always connect them. So don't feel like you're going around if you have to get a different job, or if you have to even share multiple jobs in order to fulfill the one path that you really wanna go to. And having said this, I invite you to do two things, if you will. One is to keep provoking accidents. I love this quote, and it's not I'm not talking about car accidents. I'm talking about making sure that things happen, okay? For instance, we could not meet today, but we're meeting. And I would have loved to go and meet you there in person, but at least we are meeting and we already have a connection. And we will hopefully meet again in the future, but we provoked together, we provoked this accident. And some people are not here, some people will not speak, but we are here, okay? We are provoking this. And also think of your skills as software, okay? If you have a phone, like my phone, and you have to update the software, it keeps putting more memory into the phone. You don't like that, but you expect that with every update, you get something better, right? Our mind is the same. I'm 38, so I'm in my 3.8 version. I'll be updating into the 3.9 in July. Okay, July 28, in case you want to give me something, okay? So when I get to the 3.9 version, I don't want it to be exactly the same as a 3.8. Yes, maybe I'll get some gray hair. Okay, I don't choose that update, and it will come. That's called life, biology. But there will also be things, whether it is a language, whether it is a new tech skill, whether it is knowing how to handle Zoom better, or being able to improve my public skills. But think, if I'm going from 2.x to 2.x plus 1, what new things do I want to bring to my toolbox? Okay, so I think that's one of the greatest things that we can do to feel that we are keeping that toolbox fresh. By the day that I have to just take one tool, that I know how to use it. So this is what I wanted to share. I'd love to have a little or short or long as you wish conversation, at least for a few minutes. So I'm all ears, and thanks so much for listening, and I hope that was helpful.
Thank you very much, Pedro. It's been amazing. And I would really like to say thank you for taking the time to organize this lecture. As you can all see, Pedro is an amazing lecturer, and I mean, I knew that his English was amazing, but it's good to refresh my mind on how good his English is. It's amazing, and I've really enjoyed this presentation. For me, Pedro was probably the best lecturer that I had during my undergraduate years. I think he's an amazing speaker, and as you can see, his talks are always very dynamic, and he's always sharing really cool stories. So I really appreciate that he took the time to do this talk. I would like to start the question round by asking you two questions. The first one that I wanted to ask you is about for people who are interested in development studies and who might be thinking about working in such a specific field as sport for development. Do you think that there may be some entry barriers or any other obstacle that might make it difficult to specialize in such a particular field? And the second question I had is, I really like the part of your presentation that talk about having jobs that pay the bills, but that allow you to build super interesting skills. So I would like to know if you recommend any particular sort of job that really builds the foundations to work in development, or if it's open and really anything that we try might be helpful to work in an NGO or in the not-for-profit sector.
Thank you so much. First, thanks, Luis, for the nice words. It's always a pleasure to have you. And by the way, I have to say that Luis was a key part of this book that you're saying here, because he helped me a lot with the research. He will tell you he didn't, but he did help me a lot. And by the way, Luis, we're working on the English book being launched soon, so I'll keep you posted on that, and Luis will share it with you, hopefully by the summer. I think that first, it depends really. Most of my answers, I know you'll be surprised, but are like a yes and a no, because it's all depending on your situation, okay? So if we talk about the industry, I see that you have a big added value if you decide to work in sports for development, because most people prefer to work on the professional side of it, and they don't see this as a career path, because only people that have a certain drive have the stamina to work here. For instance, it involves working, for instance, in conflict areas. There's a nonprofit that I love. It's called Peace Players International, and they work always in the border between two countries that are in conflict. And not everybody wants to go. I know that maybe you're thinking, oh, I love to go because you have a drive, but some people will be like, no, I prefer to stay comfortable. And so I think this is a big barrier of entry for them, not for you. That's why I said it's an added value. In terms of the second question was on the
Oh yeah, so it was more about like the jobs that pay the bills. If you think that there's any particular job that might be more valuable to build the foundations.
What I've seen is that when I worked in, let's say, those jobs that pay the bills, I didn't do it to say, oh, I want to earn some skills that I can use in the future. No, I did it because I had to. And so which says that if I hadn't done that, maybe I could have gotten better jobs or better learning or better training. So if you have a choice, it is absolutely okay to decide to not take those jobs and maybe work longer for free in those jobs that you really want to be at. Okay. So, but if you see yourself in a moment where you have to take both, for me, what matters is that notion, I call this to paint the CV. Let me explain what I mean. Every time, every year, everything that I'm doing needs to be part of my CV. And I'm not talking about the LinkedIn CV. I'm talking about the real one, my experience. So is what I'm doing, can what I'm doing be somehow connected to a future job? Imagine, for instance, it's not two options, a job that is connected to development and a job that pays the bills. No, there can be a job here in the middle that pays the bills and that can have some connection to development. So I would try to look for this one because that one is always going to be there. Okay, so I will start here, but I would just not go there, but pushing a little bit, and maybe you see that there are jobs that can have maybe connection to people that work in the field, people that previously worked. Okay, that's what I would try. And also to have, and I know this is the difficult challenge, the patience to know that your chance is going to come. Thanks, and I heard this from a mentor. The train of opportunity is going to come, but never when you expect it, never when you want it to come. So have your backpack ready. Have your backpack ready and say, okay, I've seen the door of Real Madrid open once for me, and then it just shut in my face. And I said, okay. And I was, in kind of like in shock. And many, many, many years later, it opened, but it was not the same door. It was a different door. It was a side door. It was less sexy, but it opened. Okay, so we have to make that. I think there's that nuance there.
That's great. If Rosanna, Viola, or Sevi, if you have any question, feel free to.
Sure. Yeah. I have about, let's say 8-9 minutes, and I'm sorry that I don't have a lot, but as always happens, there's urgent things to deal with, and we have a big problem that we need to solve for tomorrow. So I'm like, okay, so we have some minutes still to.
I do have a very quick question, if that's okay, unless Rosanna would.
Sure, Sevi, go ahead.
I have experienced a problem recently in terms of being able to say no to certain job opportunities because I'm a private tutor in my spare time. And I'm finding it hard to say no because I don't want to forego the opportunity to earn extra income. But at the same time, I'm trying to get myself into this mindset where I need to learn to say no because some opportunities have a higher opportunity cost than others. So how do you think that as someone in their early 20s, or anyone in their early 20s could overcome that mental barrier of always saying yes and always feeling obliged to say yes?
Yeah, I've always tried to practice something, and it's coming from a guy that has been always saying yes. Okay, when the thing is that sometimes saying yes to the same thing will give you more skills and can give you more funds, but there's a point where you're not going to get more skills. Imagine, you got a graph, skills and money, and there's a point where the skills are down because you already have it, right? You're not getting more, and the money is coming, okay? And there, the practice for me that I use here is, okay, how much am I renouncing here? Okay, so choosing means deciding, right? You have to decide something, you have to choose, but choosing really is renouncing. So it is the ability that you have to renounce to things. That's the focus, okay? Every time we're choosing one option, we have to be aware that we are renouncing to another one and accept that, okay? Why? Because you will be, and this is the good point, you will be renouncing to something because you will have something better coming there. Okay, so at first, for instance, I would renounce your project because I got a better project. What my cost of opportunity now is? It's time. Because for instance, I say yes to a project that gives you this money. What the problem is that you don't have time to accept another one. So I try to be free. Now, how much free can you be? Can you be 20% free? Can you be 80% engaged in that project that pays the bill, which could be teaching, but allow yourself to not fill all your gaps. So if something comes, you are flexible enough to take it. And the transition is never going to be from this to that. It's always going to overlap. And there will be a time where you'll be teaching and also doing another thing and being extremely busy. Okay. But you will see that that choice will fall more natural.
Okay. No, thank you so much. And thank you for the talk as well. It's really interesting.
My pleasure. Absolutely. It could be also thoughts. It doesn't have to be questions. Okay.
I actually have a questions. So actually, thank you for the talk. It was really good. I myself used to really fence Iker Casillas. So that was a nice start here. So I think my question is more into when you are starting an initiative. you mentioned a lot about how we have to take note of local cultures and how does that fit. You do mention that we have to ask questions so we know like the insights from the people. How do we know it's enough? Like, what do we do until we know, oh, this is enough information, this is the insights that all I need to start before I start the project itself?
They say that perfect is the enemy of good, right? For me, it will depend on what type of person you are. For instance, there are people that I'll say, don't go too fast, you know, make sure you do your research. But if you ask me this question, I'll tell you the opposite is, don't wait till it's perfect, just go ahead and try. Because it is only by getting that experience, only by getting the feedback. Think of it as a design thinking process. You create something based on iterations with people, and every iteration becomes a better product. Every time that you're asking people, you try, hey, how do you like this? Imagine in my case, you do a workshop. The first day I speak 90% of the time. And then I'm like, oh, there's a problem. Second day I ask questions and nobody speaks, until I realize that I need to just let go a little bit, and then we started implementing drama, music, so that they would just release that humble and the shyness, and then just start to do that. So the more iterations that you build, and that's why you have to start early. But think of you creating a prototype. Don't even call it project if you feel like calling a project involves being more perfect or more finished. It's never a finished product, okay? And I think that speaks good. Now, what about involving local people? Sometimes you will have the know-how, not them. It's not about saying, ask them and involve them. Always, they will be part of the process in some moments, and there will be other moments where you will be more directive, okay? What's important for me is that if you really want them to be engaged, you need to make them think that it's also their idea. If you have a great idea, but they need to implement it, if you're able to have them say it in their own words, they will be more engaged because they will understand it. You know that you understood something when you say it. Okay, if I'm with my 3-year-old kid and I say, hey, did you understand that? And he said, yes, I don't know that he understood it. So I have to ask, okay, what did you understand? Oh, I understood that. Okay, then you see, right? Because that's the way for him. And in a local context, it's always the same. It's good to connect, but you need to make people believe and think that they are part of that process. Don't put it in your shoulders. It's not you that have to finish it. It's not you that has to do this. It's a we. Okay, that's so to give a short answer, it's think of prototyping instead of preparing projects, and think of co-creating them all the time.
Cool. Thank you.
My pleasure, Naomi. So,
I know you're
Susanna, it has to be you.
Sorry, I know you're rushed for time, but in maybe for some feeling of completeness, my question was just about, you were talking about how when you start a project, it has this like exponential impact. But I wanted to sort of challenge your kind of optimism there and bring it back to your own experiences and say, what if this exponential impact is now sitting within like a very saturated market? For example, there's all these projects all across the world, all these people are trying to approach these things, and this goes back to our own individual experiences of maybe job hunting. Say, what if, you know, you're now overly qualified, you're a PhD, you've been a professor, and then you have to go back to maybe doing very kind of manual labor work, and then that becomes the life that you're stuck in. I was just wondering if you have any kind of comments about when do things become beyond our individual control, and what do we do then?
Yeah, is it, and two questions come to my mind. Is it that I love what I do, or that I do what I love? I think that I love what I do, because before getting on jobs, I said, okay, I'm just gonna get this job, and then I happen to love it. And then I got another job and I happen to love it. And I working in the sausage factory in Leicester, I happened to love it, and I hated it, but I loved it. And I would talk about how fun it would be to package that, and how I learned the process of safety, and so I would try to learn. So my question is, If you take learning out of the equation, I die like a flower without sun or water. But if the project where I am at keeps me learning and I have to find that learning, I'm always going to be 100% motivated, okay? Whether it is a manual work or an intellectual work. It is true that right now, I make a living and a life more with my, let's say, my brain than my hands, but there was other times in my life where it was not the opposite. I come from an agricultural town, and Luis doesn't know this, but I've been, you know, picking up watermelons in the summers to buy a motorcycle, to have some pocket money, and really working hard. And I think that this makes me believe that if I ever have to do this, and trust me, I don't want to do that, but I don't want to, but if I ever have to do that, at least I know that I've already done it and I could do that again. I say that quietly and slowly and low voice because I don't want it by means, but I think that it's because I did it that I know if I've done it. And now, of course, the older you get, if you have a family, you never work for yourself anymore. I'm a freelancer, but I'm an employee of my family, because you become some sort of flow of money. Every time I have a project, I think, okay, this is going, I'm like a pipe, you know, it just comes and it goes. And I feel at peace because, and you know why also it helps? Because you value yourself more. By the way, let me elaborate on this. You have to negotiate your salary, okay? If you are afraid of negotiating your salary, think of people behind you and don't negotiate on your behalf, negotiate on behalf of the people that are behind you. Who are those people? It could be your family that needs you to bring money, or your family that needs you to not ask for money, or your significant other, I don't know, but this is going to give you strength. And this is based on research. This is based on studies, okay? And especially women, because sometimes because of your empathy, you tend to negotiate worse than guys that tend to be more, let's say, more direct. And I think I'm a woman in that sense. Okay, but thinking when I receive a project, saying no or increasing my value. So the meeting that I have right now is a little bit related to this. We will need to talk about money. And I feel way more comfortable now than I did a few years ago. And I don't think it's because I'm more mature. I think it's because I have people in this package, and it's just part of it. So I think it does help to say, if I ever have to take this job or do that, as you going back to your question, Rosanna, I think I would be not. We have a saying in Spain, and the saying goes like this: my rings would not fall if I have to do something. It means that if I have to take out my ring and put it in the pocket and use my hands, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be ready. But it's a great point, okay? And just one more thing. I had a friend that said, your career is very unfair because the first years you work too much for too little money. And over time, you work too little for too much money. And I'm like, okay, how old are you? So, yeah, when you're 50, it's a joke. But when you're 25, it's like, you don't want to hear that. So I'm somewhere in the middle.
With your advice, I'm sure we'll get better at it. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's been really, thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it, and you've got my email there in the bottom, and also through, of course, through Luis, for anything that of course I can help or be in touch. I'll be more than glad to do that.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time, Pedro. It's been amazing.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful week, and of course, lots of strength now for this last stretch of the program, and all the great things that are coming. By the way, so you know, you've got a big added value with regards to former generations, and it's because you're more resilient because you're ready to work in any type of scenario. Okay, think about this, and you're training that. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye.
Bye. See you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bueno, Pedro, muchísimas gracias.
Sí, tío. Una pena que tengo tengo una cosa ahí súper esta que si no me habría quedado más rato, pero bueno, hemos estado ahí.
Sí, jolín. A mí me ha encantado, se me ha pasado volando, la verdad. Que si tienes ahora la llamada, no te preocupes, si quieres luego hablamos cuando...
Tengo que hacerlo ahora. Pero de todas maneras, cualquier cosa, aunque sea por audio, porque como tengo ya el día a full, pero si no,
Vale.
mañana o pasado hablamos tranquilamente.
Sí, cuando tú quieras, sin problema. Ahora con la sesión, si quieres me pasas la grabación, quito esta última parte ya para que
No he
quede.
dejado de grabar. Espera.
Ah, vale.